They say the dearest treasures are never found, but earned. Grandma always had a way of knowing things that hadn't even happened yet. Did she know? I can almost hear her voice, a whisper across time, "Trust your heart, child." Sometimes the people you trust most, they're the ones you have to watch. My name is Natalie, and the last thing my grandmother ever said to me before drifting into her final sleep was, "Sometimes the biggest betrayals come wrapped in the prettiest packages, dear." It all happened so fast. The reading of the will, the lawyer's somber tone, the way my mother's perfectly manicured hand reached for the house keys before the ink was even dry. It felt wrong, like a carefully orchestrated play where I was the only one who hadn't read the script. Grandma's Victorian house, the one she'd promised would be mine since I was 12, filled with memories woven into every faded wallpaper and creaking floorboard. It was a promise, but now the promise was at a risk of being taken away from me. "Honey, you have to understand," Mom had cooed, that saccharine sweetness dripping like poison. "The house needs so many repairs. We're just trying to protect you from that burden." Protect me? Was this some kind of cruel joke? Selling the house? Without even asking me? My brother, Sullivan, ever the pragmatist, scoffed, "Come on, Nat. You couldn't afford the property taxes anyway." The air hung heavy with the scent of Gran's lavender sachets, a comforting aroma now tainted with betrayal. Just weeks before, Gran and I sat in her sunroom, sharing tea and secrets, the sun warming our faces as she told stories of her youth. Could they really turn this into a cold financial deal? I spoke, my voice shaking. "You can't do this. Gran left it to me. It's in the will." My sister, Riley, usually so quiet, chimed in. "Mom and Dad have power of attorney. The sale's already gone through." I felt the color drain from my face. "The sale? Already? We found a lovely buyer," Mom said smoothly, smoothing down her designer blouse. "He's offered well above market value. The papers are signed." My fingers tightened around the envelope Gran had left me. It had arrived by courier that morning with instructions to wait until after the reading. "Get out," I whispered. "Don't be dramatic, Natalie." Dad finally spoke, his gaze still refusing to meet mine. "We're family." A bitter laugh escaped my lips. "Family doesn't do this. Get out of my grandmother's house. Now." Once alone, the weight of their words crashed down. I sank into Gran's favorite armchair, the worn velvet a small comfort. I carefully slit open the envelope. Inside, a single, aged sheet of paper and a small, ornate key. "My dearest Natalie," it began. "If you're reading this, they've done exactly what I feared they would. But don't worry. I've left you something they don't know about. Something that will help you fight back. Check behind the loose brick in the garden wall, the one with the heart carved into it." My heart pounded. Gran always said the best revenge was served with patience and wisdom, and a secret ingredient. It looked like she'd left me the recipe. Was this key the turning point I needed? The law office of Schuyler Martinez smelled like leather and quiet determination. I placed Gran's documents on her desk, the papers I'd found hidden behind that garden brick. They had kept me up all night, piecing together the puzzle. "Well," Schuyler said, adjusting her glasses, a hint of a smile playing on her lips, "your grandmother was certainly thorough. Can they really sell the house without my consent?" I asked, desperation clinging to the question. She smiled, that kind of smile that makes you sit up straighter, the kind that whispers, "This is going to be interesting." "That's the interesting part," she said, her voice dropping a notch. "Your grandmother added a very specific clause to her will 6 months ago. The house cannot be sold without your explicit, written permission, regardless of any power of attorney." "But Mom said the sale's already gone through," I protested, my voice tight with panic. Schuyler leaned forward, her eyes glinting. "Which means someone forged your signature." The words hit me like a physical blow. "Forged? Look at this," she said, pulling out a document. "This is supposedly your signature on the sale agreement. But the date," She tapped the paper. You were in Seattle that day, correct? Yes. For work. I have flight receipts. Keep them handy. We're going to need them. Skylar began typing furiously on her computer. The buyer, Edward Jackson, is coming in today. He should know his purchase isn't valid. Could we actually stop this? Reverse it? Stop it? Natalie, we can reverse it. And whoever forged your signature could face serious consequences. My phone buzzed. A text from Riley. Mom's furious you went to a lawyer. Says you're betraying the family. I showed Skylar the message. She shook her head. Interesting how they define betrayal. A knock interrupted us. Edward Jackson walked in, looking more worried than a legitimate buyer should. Mr. Jackson, Skylar gestured to a chair, her voice all professional courtesy. Please join us. I assume this is about the house. He glanced at me, a flicker of guilt in his eyes. Your mother assured me everything was in order. My mother lied, I said, my voice flat, and I never signed those papers. His face paled. Skylar slid the documents across her desk. The sale requires Ms. Natalie's consent. This signature, it's forged. She was in another state that day. Edward ran a hand through his hair. They told me you'd agreed that you just couldn't be there for the signing. They told you wrong, I said, the anger simmering beneath the surface. That house means everything to me. My grandmother. I know, he interrupted, his voice surprisingly gentle. Your mother mentioned you were difficult about letting go. Said you were too emotional about it. Something in his tone made me pause. What else did they tell you? He hesitated, then reached for his briefcase. I think you should see these emails. Your family's been planning this for months. They were quite insistent about rushing the sale. As he laid out the printed emails on Skylar's desk, my grandmother's words echoed in my mind. The biggest betrayals come wrapped in the prettiest packages. She'd known all along what they would try to do. The emails made me sick. Mom had been shopping the house around to buyers for months, while Gran was still alive. Your mother mentioned there might be resistance, Edward said, pointing to one particular message. She said you were too attached to see the financial opportunity. Financial opportunity? I read the email's date. This was sent 2 days after Gran's funeral. Skylar sorted through the papers. Mr. Jackson, would you be willing to make a formal statement about these communications? Yes, he nodded, a weary resignation in his voice. I should have asked more questions when they insisted on rushing everything through. Something felt off. My phone buzzed again. Sullivan calling. I declined it. There's more, Edward said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. Your mother mentioned something about items in the house. Valuable things your grandmother had hidden away. I remembered the key from Gran's letter. Hidden where? She wouldn't say. Just that they needed to secure the house quickly, before I had a chance to. He trailed off. Before I had a chance to what? Find whatever it is your grandmother left for you. Skylar gathered the emails into a folder. This is excellent evidence of premeditation. Natalie, we should... The office door burst open. Mom stood there, perfectly coiffed as always, with Riley hovering behind her. Natalie, what do you think you're doing? Her voice was steel-wrapped in silk. Funny, I said, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. I was about to ask you the same thing. I held up the forged document. Care to explain this? She barely glanced at it. Edward, we had a deal based on fraud, he replied, standing up. I'm withdrawing my offer. Mom's composure cracked. You can't do that. We've already allocated the funds. Allocated? I stood up, my voice trembling. You mean spent money you didn't have yet? Riley stepped forward, her face etched with worry. Nat, please. Mom and Dad need this. The business. What about the business? I demanded. Mom shot Riley a warning look. That's enough, Natalie. You're making a terrible mistake. That house is nothing but a burden. Then why are you so desperate to sell it? I pulled out Gran's letter, holding it up like a shield. What exactly are you afraid I'll find? Her eyes fixed on the envelope for the first time. I saw real fear there. Whatever you think you know, she said carefully. You don't understand the whole picture. I could smell the lavender coming from the letter in my hand, the scent of my grandmother. Then explain it to me. What's hidden in that house that's worth forging my signature for? The silence stretched, thick and suffocating. Finally, Mom turned to leave, but paused at the door, her back to us. Some secrets, she said quietly, should stay buried with the dead. As she left, Skylar picked up her phone, her face grim. I'm calling in a favor. We need to get into that house tonight before they try anything else. What was it about the house and the inheritance that my mother wanted buried with my grandmother? What lengths were they willing to go to? Sullivan cornered me in the parking lot as I left Skylar's office. You're making a huge mistake, he said, blocking my path to my car. Mom and Dad put everything they had into this deal. Everything they had? Or everything they stole? He grabbed my arm, his grip tight. Listen to me. The family business is underwater. Dad made some bad investments. I yanked free, the anger surging. So that makes it okay to steal my inheritance? He laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. Your inheritance? You were always her favorite. Every Sunday dinner, every holiday, it was always about precious Natalie. Sullivan's words stung, sharp and precise. Was he right? Was I the favored grandchild? A sob welled up within me, but I pushed it down with the anger that now consumed me. That's not true. A car door slammed nearby. Riley approached, her heels clicking on the asphalt. They're meeting tonight, she said, not meeting my eyes at the Riverside Hotel. About the house. Sullivan spun around, his face darkening. Riley, shut up. No, she said, crossing her arms, her voice trembling but firm. I'm done lying. Mom and Dad are planning something, not something big. How much had Riley known? Was it regret or fear that caused her to confess? Why risk her parents' anger? I searched her eyes, searching for a sign that I could trust her. Why are you telling me this? I asked her in a low whisper. I deserved more than just her guilt. Because, she hesitated, because I found something in Mom's office. Documents about Gran's estate that don't match what was in the will. Sullivan stepped toward her, his expression menacing. You had no right to go through those papers. And you had no right to forge our sister's signature. Riley shot back. I stared at my brother, the accusation hanging in the air. You forged my signature? He at least had the decency to look ashamed. Mom said it was the only way. We needed the money fast before... Before what? Riley cut in, her voice rising. The audit. The business is being investigated for fraud. They needed clean money to cover the tracks. My phone buzzed. Skylar texting. Got the keys. Meet at the house in 30 minutes. I have to go, I said, pushing past Sullivan, my mind racing. All of my past traumas had come back to me in that single moment. My past traumas had crippled me as a child, but I had fought to find a way to become a better version of myself. How could the people that made me who I am be the same people destroying it? Nat, wait. Riley called after me. The meeting tonight, it's at 8 room 412. They don't know I know, but I heard Mom on the phone. Whatever they're planning, it's happening soon. Sullivan grabbed her arm, his face twisted with anger. You're going to regret this. No, she pulled away, her eyes filled with a newfound resolve. I'm done being part of this mess. Gran wouldn't have wanted this. I looked at my siblings, their faces reflecting years of unspoken resentments and hidden truths. Sullivan, angry and defensive. Riley finally showing her true colors. Thanks for telling me, Riley, I said, my voice softer now. But why now? She smiled sadly, a flicker of the grand spirit in her eyes. Because Gran once told me that doing the right thing late is better than never doing it at all. As I drove away, I texted Skylar, "Change of plans. We need to crash a meeting tonight. And bring your phone to record everything." Driving felt like a movie. I didn't know what to expect next, but the one thing I did know was that secrets were coming, and they weren't pretty. The pieces were finally falling into place, revealing a picture darker and more twisted than I could have ever imagined. Whatever secrets that house held, I had a feeling we'd find them all tonight. The pieces of the puzzle came together as I put on an old record that I hadn't played in years. But the song brought back the memory of my grandmother in the passenger seat, singing along. With everything else that was happening, I missed her presence. Room 412 of the Riverside Hotel had a connecting door to 414, a detail Riley hadn't known but was about to become very important. As Skylar and I pressed our ears against the wall, Mom's voice came through clearly, amplified by the hotel's paper-thin walls. "The audit team arrives Monday," she was saying, her voice sharp and impatient. "If we don't have that money transferred by then, we know Kennedy, but Natalie's lawyer is causing problems," Dad interrupted, his voice laced with anxiety. "Then fix it, Griffin," Mom snapped. "We didn't spend 30 years building this business to watch it crumble, because your mother decided to play favorites from beyond the grave." I started recording on my phone, my hands shaking. The stakes were higher than I realized. "What about the paintings?" A new voice spoke, one I recognized as Edward Jackson. "You promised there were valuable artworks hidden in the house." "There are," Mom snapped. "Martha, that conniving mother-in-law of mine, had a collection. Insurance documents value them at over $2 million. My hand shook harder. "Gran's art collection? She'd always told me they were just prints." "And you're sure they're in the house?" Edward asked, his voice edged with desperation. "In the walls," Dad said, his voice grim. "Behind the wooden panels in the sunroom. That's why we need to move fast." So much made sense now. Skylar scribbled furiously on her notepad. "Insurance fraud," she mouthed, her eyes wide. "The audit team will find everything," Mom continued, her voice laced with a cold fury. "The fake invoices, the offshore accounts. Martha knew. That's why she changed her will at the end. Why she left everything to Natalie. She was protecting the art." Dad sighed, his voice heavy with resignation. "Making sure we couldn't get to it. Well, she failed." Mom's voice hardened, her words like daggers. "Once we get back in that house," a loud crack interrupted her. Riley had entered their room. "Mom? Dad? What's going on?" Silence grew. The tension became so thick that I could feel it. Then, I heard my mother's voice, followed by Riley's. "Riley? What are you doing here?" "I followed you. I heard everything." Riley sobbed. "Honey, this doesn't concern you," Mom said softly. "Doesn't concern me? You're stealing from Gran's estate. From Natalie." Riley's voice cracked, laced with betrayal. "We're protecting our family's legacy," Mom insisted, her voice losing its control. "We are committing what Riley asked." What was the response that caused me to become paralyzed? The pain in her voice resonated with me. I understood her feeling because the woman that she was talking to was also my mother, who had lied to us both. If Mom thought lying was protecting us, how wrong she was. By committing fraud, Riley's voice cracked, the words spilling out in a rush of anger and hurt. By forging signatures and hiding artwork? "Your father and I had no choice," Mom said, her voice rising in desperation. "The business was failing. Because you were embezzling money," Riley shouted, the accusation raw and unfiltered. "Gran figured it out, didn't she? That's why she changed her will." Silence fell, heavy and suffocating. Then Dad spoke quietly, his voice barely audible. "How long have you known?" How many family secrets was I unaware of? So many that it would take more than a lifetime to discover. How many more times would my mother have me fooled? And what was the end game? Long enough, Riley said, her voice trembling but resolute. I found the real accounts, the ones you hide from the auditors. Gran didn't leave clues just for Natalie. She left them for all of us, to see who would do the right thing. Skylar touched my arm, nodding toward the door. We had enough recorded. More than enough. But I couldn't move. I was transfixed, paralyzed by the sheer scope of my family's depravity. All this time I believed that they were honest, hard-working people. Instead, they had stolen from others and used lies and theft to move up in life. I was furious, but more than that I was hurt. Everything I had believed was a lie. What did that say about me? What did it say about my life choices? I'm calling the police, Riley said firmly, reaching for her phone. Like hell you are. Mom snarled, her voice laced with venom. Something crashed. Riley screamed. And suddenly, doing the right thing became a lot more urgent than family secrets. What could I do? I had never been a fighter. I didn't like violence, but was there a way to protect my sister from her mother? Without thinking, without hesitating, I burst through the connecting door just as Mom grabbed Riley's phone and smashed it against the wall. Get your hands off her, I shouted, my voice echoing in the sudden silence. Everyone froze. Dad stood by the window, pale and shaking. Edward backed toward the door, his face a mask of fear. Mom still had Riley's arm in a death grip. Well, Mom said, her voice eerily calm, the prodigal daughter joins us. The room felt as if the walls were closing in and my head was spinning. I had to think quickly. Skylar stepped in behind me, her phone clearly recording, the red light a silent accusation. I suggest you let her go, Kennedy, she said, her voice firm and unwavering, unless you'd like assault charges added to the fraud. Mom released Riley, who scrambled to my side, her eyes wide with fear and gratitude. You recorded everything, didn't you? She whispered. Every word. I confirmed, nodding grimly. The fraud, the embezzlement, the art theft, all of it. Edward, a shadow that never existed, had begun to slowly back away from us all. You don't understand, Dad pleaded, his voice cracking with desperation. The business was failing. We needed to steal from your own mother. I cut him off, my voice trembling with rage. To forge documents and hide evidence. Edward cleared his throat, shifting uncomfortably. I think it's time I made a full statement about my involvement. Mom whirled on him, her eyes blazing with fury. You wouldn't dare, Edward said, grabbing his cell phone in an attempt to record his interaction with my parents. I've been recording too, ever since you first approached me about rushing the sale. Something felt wrong, and now I know why. My family began to circle around me, their actions unpredictable. But Riley stood by my side. You're all making a terrible mistake, Mom said, but her perfect facade was cracking, revealing the desperation and fear beneath. Riley touched my arm, her voice barely a whisper. The paintings, Nat, they're not just valuable. They're stolen. She turned to Edward and whispered, Run. Mom began shouting. Riley shot out of the way and toward the exit, Edward just a few steps ahead of her. The entire room broke out in hysteria, confusion, and mistrust. Riley's words hung in the air, heavy with implications I was just beginning to grasp. What? Gran discovered what, Mom? Dad's been using the business to launder money from art theft for years. Gran found out when she discovered one of her paintings was a forgery. Dad sank into a chair, his face buried in his hands. Martha confronted me 6 months ago, said she had proof. That's when she changed her will. I realized, when she added that clause about my consent. She knew we'd try to sell the house. Mom said bitterly, and was she trying to act like she was a victim of my grandmother? Knew we need to get to those paintings before the audit. Skylar was already on her phone, her voice calm and professional amidst the chaos. Yes, detective. Room 412 at the Riverside. We have multiple confessions recorded. Mom lunged for her, her eyes blazing with a desperate fury. But I stepped between them, blocking her path. It's over, Mom. Gran gave me that house for a reason. To protect her legacy from people like you. Mom burst out laughing, the sound sharp and hysterical. People like me? I built this family while she judged us all from her moral high ground. No, Riley said quietly, her voice filled with a quiet strength that surprised me. You destroyed this family. Gran was trying to save us. Police sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder with each passing second. Dad buried his face in his hands, the last vestiges of his composure crumbling. Edward moved to block the door, his face pale with fear. The paintings, I said. Are they still in the house? Mom's silence was answer enough. She was finally beaten and knew it. We need to get there first, I said to Skylar, my voice urgent. She nodded, her eyes filled with determination. I'll call for a warrant. As the sirens drew closer, I watched my parents' empire crumble, built on lies and deceit, destroyed by truth and the unwavering spirit of a woman who had seen it all coming. Gran would have been proud. The police found the paintings exactly where Dad said they'd be, hidden behind the wooden panels in Gran's sunroom. 13 masterpieces, each worth a fortune, each tied to a different theft over the past decade. Your father's business was just a front, Detective Morris explained as we watched the art being carefully removed, each piece a testament to my family's corruption. High-end furniture imports provided the perfect cover for smuggling stolen artwork. What a legacy my father had led behind. Sullivan showed up as they were loading the last painting, his face etched with shock and disbelief. What have you done, Nat? He asked, his voice raw with emotion. Me? I turned to face him, my voice weary but firm. I'm not the one who turned Gran's house into a storage facility for stolen art. He had made our grandmother's house a storage facility. They're going to prison, he said, his voice breaking. Our parents are going to prison. A look of shock washed over his face. Riley stepped forward, her voice clear and unwavering. They made their choice, Sully, just like you did when you forged Nat's signature. The detective perked up at that, his eyes narrowing. Is that an admission of forgery? Sullivan's face crumpled, his shoulders slumping in defeat. It was true after all, and there would be no turning back. Mom said she promised no one would get hurt, he stammered. But people did get hurt, I said softly, the words laced with a deep, abiding sadness. Gran spent her last months discovering her own son was a criminal. Her art collection was replaced with fakes. The business she helped build was a lie. Martinez, an evidence technician, called out. We found something else. Skylar joined us as they pulled out a metal box from behind the last panel, its surface tarnished with age. My heart jumped. It was the perfect size for the key Gran had left me. Sullivan protested, his voice rising in panic. That's private property. Actually, Skylar said, her voice calm but firm. According to the will, everything in this house belongs to Natalie. He was becoming more and more erratic, and his actions were unpredictable. The key fit perfectly. Inside, nestled on a bed of faded velvet, lay a leather-bound journal and a USB drive, both bearing the unmistakable scent of Gran's lavender. The journal, worn and cracked, felt heavy in my hands, a tangible link to the past. I began to question the USB drive. Your grandmother contacted me 6 months ago, Skylar explained, her voice filled with a mixture of admiration and sadness. She'd been gathering evidence, documenting everything she knew. That they'd try to sell the house once she was gone. The USB drive may be the only way to put my parents behind bars. Why didn't she go to the police? Riley asked, her voice filled with confusion. Because she wanted to give them a chance to come clean, I realized, remembering Gran's words about love and wisdom. She was protecting us until the very end. But why did she not trust us to make the decision to turn to my parents? Perhaps it was something that my grandmother did not want us to be involved in. Detective Morris reviewed the journal's contents, his expression growing grimmer with each passing page. This is enough to put them away for a long time. Art theft, money laundering, fraud. The pages revealed not only the details of the art smuggling operation, but also the depth of my parents' deception and greed. The lies were even more intricate than my grandmother had assumed. Sullivan slumped against the wall, his face buried in his hands, the weight of his family's actions crushing him. I didn't know about any of this, he swore, his voice muffled with shame. No, Riley said, her voice devoid of pity, you just went along with it. Like we all did, until now. What would we do after this was all over? I opened Gran's journal to the last entry, her familiar handwriting bringing tears to my eyes. My dearest Natalie, it began, if you're reading this, you've done what I couldn't. Expose the truth while protecting what matters most. Our family's real legacy, not the money or the art, but the courage to stand up for what's right. I'm so proud of you, my girl. The letter was dated to just a few days before she passed. She must have known something like this would happen. If only she had entrusted to me what the real family legacy would be. The tears began to flood down my face as Riley put her arm around me. As the police finished their work, Riley, Sullivan, and I stood in the sunroom, watching the sunrise through Gran's stained glass windows, the colors painting the room in hues of hope and renewal. Our family would never be the same, the bonds irrevocably broken, the trust shattered beyond repair. But maybe that was exactly what we needed, a complete and utter demolition of the lies to make way for a foundation built on truth and honesty. The sun began to rise a little bit above the horizon. I knew this would be a journey and that it would be a challenge, but it was something that was necessary for us all. The morning sun streamed through Gran's freshly cleaned windows as I sipped tea from her favorite cup, the warmth spreading through me like a gentle embrace. Riley sat across from me in the sunroom, her face still bearing the shadows of the night before, but her eyes filled with a newfound sense of peace. While Sullivan helped Edward carry in the last of the restored artwork, their faces lined with exhaustion and their steps heavy with remorse, Schuyler was the constant source of comfort for us. The insurance company confirmed it, Schuyler said, reviewing documents at Gran's antique desk, the wood gleaming in the morning light. Once they verify the painting's authenticity, the recovery reward alone will be substantial. What would we do with it all? I don't care about the money, I said, my voice firm. I just want the art back where it belongs, where people can appreciate it, not locked away as collateral for my parents' greed. Art made me feel more at home than anything in the world. It was something that could not be taken away from me. Edward hung the final piece, a small impressionist garden scene, in its original spot, the colors vibrant and alive. Your grandmother had incredible taste, he said, his voice filled with admiration. These aren't just valuable, they're beautiful. She always said art should be lived with, not locked away, a source of inspiration and joy for all who behold it. I thanked him for all of his time and trouble. It was Edward that had made this all happen. Riley smiled, running her hand along the frame of the painting, her touch gentle and reverent. I'm glad these treasures were not destroyed. She was the most artistic of the three of us siblings. What was she planning on doing with all of the art? The thoughts whirled in my head and my anxiety rose. Sullivan cleared his throat, shifting his weight uncomfortably. Listen, Nat, about everything. I know. I cut him off, my voice soft but firm. You're sorry, but sorry doesn't fix this. We need to learn to accept the consequences of our actions. No, he agreed, his gaze meeting mine with a sincerity I hadn't seen in years, but maybe this will help. He pulled out a stack of papers, his hands trembling slightly. I'm testifying against Dad's business partners, all of them. I know it's not much, but I will help to put them behind bars. Riley gasped, her eyes widening in shock. Sully, those people are dangerous. So is living with guilt, he said, his voice resolute. Gran taught us better than this, to stand up for what's right, no matter the cost. He set the papers down, his task not complete. Thank you, Sully, I said. The doorbell rang, breaking the tension in the room. Edward answered it and returned with Detective Morris, her expression serious but tinged with a hint of satisfaction. Good news, she announced. Your parents took the plea deal. They'll serve time, but their cooperation means we can take down the entire smuggling network, bringing justice to those who have been wronged for far too long. Riley asked, her voice barely a whisper. The business? Being dissolved, Detective Morris replied, her voice flat. But the legitimate assets are being liquidated, and the proceeds will be used to compensate the victims of your parents' fraud. As the police officer moved to leave, Edward said that we would take care of things here. Skylar put on her overcoat. The house is officially yours now, Natalie, free and clear, no more legal hurdles. The legacy is yours, and you will be in control of things. Do you know what you want to do with it all? She asked. What will you do with it? Edward asked, his eyes filled with genuine curiosity. I looked around at the art on the walls, the colors vibrant and alive, at the sunlight catching the stained glass, casting kaleidoscopic patterns on the floor, at the garden beyond, blooming with life and promise. I saw my siblings, their faces etched with pain and regret, but also with a glimmer of hope and a shared desire to heal. I realized something important about our family. Maybe the healing needed to happen. They would have to go their own way, and I theirs. Then I looked into the eyes of Riley and Sullivan. They looked back at me in pain, and I felt that maybe there was a way for them to work to restore. Make it a home again, a real one, a place where we can rediscover our love and our passion. Riley squeezed my hand, her eyes filled with tears. Gran would have loved that, she whispered. Sullivan nodded, his expression somber but understanding. We'll help you, he said, his voice sincere. Later, as the evening light painted the sunroom in amber hues, I found one last thing hidden within the pages of Gran's journal. A pressed flower, a forget-me-not, its delicate petals still retaining a hint of their original color. Tucked beneath it was a small, handwritten note. Remember, my darling, even in the darkest of times, love and forgiveness will always find a way to bloom. I began to cry a bit more. As I closed the journal, a sense of peace settled over me, a quiet acceptance of the past and a hopeful anticipation of the future. The scars would remain, a constant reminder of the pain and betrayal we had endured, but they would also serve as a testament to our strength, our resilience, and our unwavering commitment to building a better future, one filled with love, honesty, and forgiveness. A future where family, though forever changed, could still find a way to bloom. Gran's house stood tall and proud, a beacon of hope amidst the darkness, a symbol of resilience in the face of adversity. It was more than just a house. It was a home, a sanctuary, a testament to the enduring power of love, family, and the unwavering spirit of a woman who had known all along that even the deepest betrayals could be overcome with courage, compassion, and a little bit of Gran's lavender-scented wisdom. Wow, that was intense, right? What would you do in Natalie's situation? Have you ever experienced a betrayal that changed your life? Share your thoughts and stories in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe for more gripping stories, and share it with anyone who loves a good family drama. Let's start a conversation and support each other through life's challenges.